Now that there's a tribe in the Pacifics that basically worship Americans as gods, and this includes building their version of radio telescopes as well as goggles in order to get us back. And this whole thing started back in the 1930s where American soldiers briefly occupied their island, and from their point of view we had alien-like technology such as flying machines as well as talking boxes. And this eventually started a movement on these islands called the cargo cult that involves a worship of a man called John Frum, and he's often described as a godlike figure who is also the king of America. And many speculate that the name actually came from an American GI who ended up handing candy as well as other things to these tribes. And he was simply saying that he was John from Alaska or Virginia, and that was all that these tribe members were able to pick up. Nevertheless, John Frum became a celebrated figure on these islands with his holiday on February 15th of each year, and tribes will pay tribute to him by marching on this day of every single year with jeans on as well as USA painted on their back or chest. Many elders on this island wear American uniforms as well as medals that were left behind. And even today the cargo cult is still alive in some of these Pacific islands, and they simply want John Frum to deliver dozens of cargoes to their islands in order to solve all their problems.
Now, as perfectly explained as it was explained by the young man in that previous video, one of the more interesting things about this cargo cult is that they hold many similarities to many other religions that are in the world today. In so as much as they are expecting a Messiah, they are expecting John Frum to return to them and bring about a new revelation and bring about a new culture, a new economy to save them from their situation, save them from their own sins, so to speak. And that they are looking for John Frum as a Messiah type, which is a common theme that is in many different religions. But you know what else is a common theme in many different religions? When we look at some of our more ancient religions, what is it that we see that is a common theme? We see a common theme of our ancients depicting some type of being in some type of flying machine. Some of these flying machines have been made into a 3D situation, and it actually does fly. And although the Egyptian authorities are trying to say that this is a reprint on top of another reprint, but it just so happens that the reprint on top of another reprint made additional flying machines. It'd be one thing if it only made a helicopter. It would be one thing if it only made a jet. It would be one thing if it only made this tank-like vehicle. But the fact that it made a helicopter, a jet, and some type of tank-like feature, all in the same pictograph, the same meta-nature, leads me to the realization that maybe the people in and around 6,000 BCE saw something flying in the sky. That may be the fact that each one of these cultures around the world, whether we're talking about in the South Pacific, in Mexico, in South America, North America, Egypt, Sumeria, no matter where we're talking in the world, in Europe, everyone seemed to have built pyramids. Now, some will say that the pyramid structure, when it comes to constructing with earth and material, is the easiest one and most common, and general mind sharing would create that. And that is possible. But when you look at the flying machines, when you look at the pyramid, and when you look at all these interesting fellows who oftentimes are anthropomorphized, but each one seemingly having the same pose, each one holding what could be described as a pine cone in one hand, representation of the pineal gland or representation of some type of technology, carrying some type of bag, whether it is a bag that is a weapon or technology or anything of the sort. And if you look closely, almost every one of them is wearing some type of wrist device that all are very similar. Now, if it was just one thing, we could say that man creates images that he sees around him, and all these people saw the similar image around them. But somehow they continue to create the same image, build the same buildings, and each one of them develops some type of flying machine. Now, oftentimes when all the information starts to add up, you start to come to some educated theories. And the educated theory would be that all of this happened after the Younger Dryas flood, which happened between 12,000 and 9,000 BCE, where sea levels rose 400 feet and destroyed most civilizations around the world at that time frame. And seeing as how even today, the overwhelming majority of people on the planet live near the coast, whereas if 400 feet of sea level rise today, the overwhelming majority of society in the world would be destroyed. That only those who are deeply interior would be able to survive. Now, evidence suggests that man has existed, or some type of man has existed on this planet for at least 200,000 years. And prior to that, that there may have been civilizations that existed that was more advanced than civilization is today, and definitely more advanced than civilization was at 8,000, 7,000, 6,000 BCE. Now, if these pre-existing earthen civilizations were in existence, but yet were destroyed because of a 30,000 year ice age and then a rapid 400 feet sea level rise within 6 days, then it is reasonable that those very few who survived, who had greater technology, went about the world restarting civilization. As many of the ancient stories talk about how a god came from the heavens, a god came from the heavens, and the god over here came from the heavens and restarted civilization, or a god emerged from the sea and restarted civilization, whether we're talking about the Dogons and the Namo coming from the sea to restart their civilization, or if we're talking about Oannes coming from the sea in the Persian Gulf, restarting their civilization. Or was it Thoth who flew around restarting civilization in the land of Kim after the sinking of Atlantis? Or Quetzalcoatl who came from the heavens and restarted the Aztec Mayans civilization? These stories are around the world of some divine being with higher technology. And just as the people in the Sentinel Islands, and just as the people on the island of Vanuatu and other South Pacific islands have mistaken technology and the people who are operating that technology to be gods, it is very plausible that the ancient gods to which man speak of, the Anunnaki, the Namu, the Negas, that all of these are simply pre-existing civilization prior to the last ice age, which was over 50,000 years ago. That through that cataclysmic event of a 30,000, 40,000 year ice age, ending with a deep freeze of the Younger Dryas freeze, and then a quick Younger Dryas flood that went 400 feet above, rose sea levels 400 feet, created the mythos of all these ancient civilizations. And what we see in modern day is how that is very possible, very, very possible with the cargo cults in the South Pacific. So I want to hear what you guys think about it. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.